this year. He really enjoys catching. So he's got his own gear. He is having a blast. I think that maybe he helps himself because he's constantly in yeah. Yeah, and it's tiring. So we yeah. Yeah. And
Those pictures are awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, it's I just kind of regular. I think that's a
yeah, and so I have my set. So we'll take turns and catch it, and it's been I wish I had something. Oh yeah, his loves is it's so I don't it's thing. And Ava bounces back next like she wants to play and she's doing dance. So I'm just trying to everything. Yeah.
next time. But I don't wait for the route should go until
Yeah, I mean,
shouldn't know how
I kind of told you so. So,
morning, it's already.
New hour. Thank you all for each of you for taking the time to participate in this Safe Communities Roundtable. The fact that you're all here in the audience and at this table tells me we already share one important belief that our community can do better and that government at all levels must do better. I want to begin by recognizing each of you as leaders in our community. While you come from different professions and organizations, you share a common commitment to serving others. We have gathered people from different professions, different experiences, and different perspectives. Some of you work in law enforcement. Some provide medical care, behavioral health treatment, or recovery services. Some of you serve people experiencing homelessness every day. Others represent local government, nonprofit organizations, businesses, governments, neighborhoods, and the faith community. I want to begin by recognizing each of you as leaders in our community. While you come from different professions and organizations, you share a common commitment to serving others. Every one of you brings value, experience, and a perspective that deserves to be heard. And I'm grateful that you've taken time to contribute to this very important conversation. My own background is rooted in law. I've practiced law in Oregon in the private sector for nearly 30 years, for 3 decades. And concurrent to that, I served 20 years in the Air Force as a JAG, 30 years overall, and 20 years as a military lawyer. And throughout my career, I have learned that laws enacted by elected representatives are never just words on paper. They shape what happens every day in our neighborhoods. They influence public safety. They determine how resources are allocated. They affect the tools available to law enforcement, healthcare professionals, and service providers, and ultimately impact the lives of those struggling with homelessness, addiction, and mental illness. But I have also learned something equally important. Good public policy cannot be written from behind a desk. It must be informed by the people who live these challenges every day. I didn't convene this roundtable because I believe I have all the answers. I convened it because I believe many of the answers are already in this room. My objective here today and my general operating philosophy is to bring the right people together, ask the right questions, and help turn good ideas into better public policy. Over the years in my work, and as I prepared for today's discussion, one thing is increasingly clear. Even well-intentioned people working toward the same goal sometimes describe the challenge differently. Different agencies collect different data. Different organizations measure different outcomes. Different professionals see different pieces of the problem. And sometimes we share common goals or have to be working at cross purposes. Before we can develop better public policy, we must make sure we're talking about the same problem, measuring the same thing, and working toward the same outcomes. Today's conversation is about more than just homelessness. It's about safe communities. That includes the safety of our neighborhoods, the safety of our first responders, the vitality of our businesses, and just as importantly, the safety and dignity and well-being of those living in our streets. These are not competing values. A truly safe community is one that protects its neighborhoods while creating real opportunities for people to recover and rebuild their lives. My hope is that we leave here today with more than just a list of opinions. I hope we've created more working relationships and that we leave with a shared understanding of what is working, what is not, what success should look like, and what practical changes, whether in policy, funding, or the law, could produce better outcomes for the people we all serve. My hope is that we all continue to work together toward a common goal. Every person deserves to live in a safe community. Every person deserves the opportunity to live with dignity. And every taxpayer deserves to know that the resources devoted to these challenges are actually producing meaningful results. Thank you all for being here, your willingness to share your expertise, and for your commitment to making our community safer and healthier and stronger. Thank you for your commitment. Let's begin with introductions around the table. Tell us your name, the organization you're with, and your role there, and anything we think we need to know about your mission, and just briefly. Thank you. Jennifer.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Ocker, founder and CEO of G Street Integrated Health in Springfield. We have recently opened another clinic in Bonita. We have a wellness center, which is our behavioral health center. We are 6.5 years old, nonprofit, started with 12 employees. We now are at 90, and the need is great. Our philosophy is that all people deserve quality health care with kindness and respect, regardless of walk of life. So it's not uncommon to see someone with very good insurance sitting next to someone who also brought their shopping cart. That's who we are, that's who we serve.
My name is John Clare. I'm the Senior Director at Ideal Option. We're a medication-assisted treatment program in Lane County in Springfield. I also supervise the collection program in Lincoln County, the downtown navigators, as well as the new EMS and fire contract. Ideal Option. Our whole mission is to give people their lives back. So that's what we strive to do, is to meet people right where they are, assist them in the medication, the life-saving medication that they need, and get them back to be better versions of themselves. Super thankful to be here in this community and part of the county. I say this often, it used to be just a joke, but it's become a reality. I get to do this all over the United States, and I share what's going on here in Lane County more than any other program that I have throughout the U.S. And so that just speaks to the quality of individuals. I think you see them sitting at this table, truly people committed to a better, safer community and quality of health for the people here. So thank you.
I'm Celeste. I am the board president of Neighbors Speaking Neighbors. We Western Washington Wednesday through Saturday, every federal holiday, and every day dining is closed downtown because there's no food yet down. We started as Eugene Catholic Workers in 2005, serving oatmeal and coffee under the Washington Terrorist Convention. But Charlie Dick said he served 15 people the first day that they started. We served over 3,000 people last month with almost 7,000 meals, and we're expecting. These are not the numbers that we are looking for. Neighbors Speaking Neighbors is a nonprofit with no paid staff. We would like to be put out of business for the people in this room can help us be put out of business. And we're going to work on that.
I'm Jensina Hawkins. I'm the chair of Churchill Area Neighbors and co-chair of Neighborhood Leaders Council.
I was previously chair of the Eugene Police Commission, and my proudest moment there was standing up the law enforcement mental health and wellness subcommittee. And we actually pushed for city council to get an extension for our committee, to be able to spend an entire year working with the ED as far as what is actually beneficial to these officers, these first responders who are dealing with the things in our community. And so one of the things that came from that was the police rest stop at the Land Fishing Center. A place for the officers to get out of their cars, stretch their legs, do the reports, grab a bite to eat, use the restroom in peace without people rubbernecking and harassing them, because we know that they don't get a break.
Hello everyone, my name is Tristan. I'm with Community Medical Services. We're an MAT program. We're not new to America. We're kind of all over the place, but we are very new to Oregon, and that's a very welcome to happy to be here with all you guys.
Good afternoon, I'm Ian Local, retired sheriff's office. I am director of operations at Veterans Legacy Camp Home, we're a grassroots nonprofit. We serve veterans that dealt with incarceration, traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, homelessness, and addiction. We currently have veterans from Vietnam, OEF, OIF, and Gulf War. It's a unique approach to dealing with veterans with these issues. We create a safe environment where these folks start the healing process in. Partner with several nonprofits, government agencies. And it's an opportunity for these guys to have a safe environment, again, to start the healing process. Not everybody had a good transition, a good military experience. We're there to help direct them in the right direction. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Yalmori, Executive Director and CEO of the Revenue Foundation. We have about 75 units of stabilization housing in Eugene and Crestwell. We also do holistic case management, and we are helping with the VA to help 35 veterans that have been homeless transition to permanent housing, as well as we're monitoring part of the reflection program. We have 25 units of stabilization housing, and we help support the needs of Josh's team because they do an amazing job having the navigators help them with services that they need to get to a better life.
Good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Walter. I'm blessed to serve as the Executive Director of the Eugene Mission for the past 8 years. And the Eugene Mission is now in its 70th year. And what I'd like to share is I experienced firsthand when I lived at the mission during COVID, the spectacular failing of public policy in the way that it served our community, our guests on the street, our people suffering. And I think that has a lot to do with the safety of this community, and I'm looking forward to robust discussion on how we can improve that.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Riley. I'm with the Lane County Reflection Program. I'm the coordinator. We started that program in October of 2024. Measure 110, the recriminalization of controlled substances is where funding came from. We created a program here in Lane County for those criminality stems directly from substance use disorder or unmet needs, to have navigators work in real time with law enforcement, to have stabilization housing, case management, and meet the immediate needs. Prior to this assignment, I was with the Sheriff's Office here in Lane County for almost 29 years. So I saw firsthand the number of people that have been in the criminal justice system due to substance use disorder. And if we can pivot those folks to treatment, a lot of times their criminality stops, goes away, and we can get them on the path for recovery. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carl Wilson. I have the honor and privilege of serving as your sheriff. I have also had the honor and privilege of serving this community with the sheriff's office for over 30 years. Many of the people at this table I've worked for or worked with, big fans of most of them, so I look forward to today's discussion. So.
thank you all for this introduction. We have an extraordinary group of people here at the panel and in the audience, and I'm just really glad that you're here. I've had the privilege of spending hours talking with most of you and touring your facilities, learning about your programs, observing your work, and having candid conversations. And each of those conversations has taught me something, and I'm grateful for your willingness to be here today to share with the public and share it with our friends in the audience. One thing that's been increasingly clear to me over the years is that some of you have not met each other, and that you don't know about your various efforts. I know, Lisa, I introduced you to Clint a couple months ago. So many of you do know each other. You've been working together for years, but you don't often have the opportunity to sit around a table together and have this conversation, a candid conversation to talk about what needs to change. The challenges of homelessness, addiction, mental illness, and public safety are too complex for any one profession, organization, or level of government to solve alone. Progress requires listening to each other and understanding different perspectives, identifying where we can work together more efficiently. So I'm very grateful you all accepted my invitation, and equally grateful for this audience that has business owners, local representatives, and people that have been serving in the communities through their churches as well. My hope is that today's discussion doesn't just inform the public, but that it also strengthens the relationships and partnerships that will help move our community forward. And with that, Bill, I'd like to turn this over to you to moderate this discussion.
Thank you very much for that. All right, we want to start with the service providers. You folks out there, many of you boots on the ground, you're seeing what's happening every day. We know that according to Lane County's latest point in time count, almost 4,500 people here locally living on the streets. That's about a 7.5% increase from the previous point in time count. And while we've been quibble about the accuracy of it, we know it's a big problem. So the question I want to start is, first off, what's driving it locally? The con- You've got the microphone in front of you, so then you tell us what, give us a little bit about what you're seeing.
I feel very protected. My main clinic is in Springfield, which has a much different political climate than Eugene. If we have an instance where we need police, it's one call, 2 minutes, 4 cops. And the problem disappears. And then we apologize to the other people that were in the room. In Benita, again, insulated, it's sheriffs. We've only had to call a sheriff once in a year and a half. The police showed up, they had a dog, it was great. My staff was protected. Over the last 6 years, I've been asked repeatedly, open a clinic in Eugene, we need you in Eugene. I'm afraid to do that. I'm afraid to do that for my staff, because I don't think that they would be as well protected as they are in the other 2 clinics. That doesn't mean I won't do it. I mean, I have to figure out how to do it, right? That's my perspective on the safety in medicine today.
All right, Josh, same question for you. What's driving it?
What's driving the homelessness?
Yeah, or what's,
I think that is a catch-22. I think that when you have a community like you do with Lake County, and you have obviously amazing service providers represented here at the table, and there's many, many, many more amazing service providers within this community, I think it's really easy to seek after services where you have services. So the more services you have, the more people you have that flock to services. And just like anything else in life, when you have good services, it travels really, really fast. And so you end up with an influx of people from other communities that hear through social media or whatever, that there is access to certain services within certain communities. So I think it is a catch-22 on that level, because there is great providers here that offer great services, and so I think that, again, that's a catch-22. For me, I get to work with law enforcement in this community every single day, so I see it from a different lens, I think, than a lot of people. I think that at times law enforcement's hands are tied with what they can and cannot do. You know, Spain brought up the way that laws are and government rule when our law enforcement agencies are allowed to do certain things. You know, the program that I was lucky enough to be able to be asked to help kick off here with reflection with Clint Riley, that happened because of law change, right? The government and the people of Oregon wanted to decriminalize substances, and it backfired horribly. And a change happened, and we were able to create this program here, which is doing amazing. So I get to see law enforcement offering help to those that are willing and want the help. And the resources are there, my team is there, Steve and the amazing folks at Rugby Foundation are there. You know, Dan and his team out there. I mean, again, I can sit here and name every single service provider here. I mean, Jennifer and I started talking as soon as I sat down about how we know each other through Deflection and what her organization offers. So I think that there is services. I think that things like this, Clint and I talk about this all the time. People ask us how we've done what we're doing, and it's literally communications. Clint started the minute that he retired, and within 24 hours accepted the position to be the program coordinator. So those of you that are mental health specialists, you might want to talk to him about that. But it's been his ability to communicate with treatment providers. As an ex-law enforcement officer, he was able to communicate with local treatment providers and say, hey, we're getting ready to do this. Would you be willing to participate? And you know, everybody was willing. You know, but it's conversations like this, being able to sit down and say, you know, hey, I don't necessarily agree with this, and not end up in a yelling match, but be able to have good conversation. I think that's what's going to really change the dynamic. So having, you know, you spearhead something like this, I think is really valuable for the community to be able to have a cordial conversation, right? Like grown adults without all of the yuckiness that tends to happen nowadays. I think that's how we really continue to change the problem that we're facing, because it's not just here, it's across the United States. But if we can continue to do things like this, talk together as a community, I think that change really can happen.
Do you think that, since you brought it up, do you think that the communications between all the different groups, not only in this room, but others out in the community that are dealing with addiction and homeless, do you think that they communicate fairly well with each other, or do you think there's gaps in that?
I think, again, I think both. I think that the answer is both. I think that there's people trying to do what they, I don't believe that, I have struggled with believing that people wake up and do what it is that they do every day for wrong reasons. Like, I want to help people. I do what I do because someone helped me, and that changed my life. That motivates and drives what it is that I do, and I think that what I hear from a lot of service providers is just frustration on how to continue to make that happen, right? I mean, you talk about Measure 110, Clint talked about Measure 110. Despite anybody's feelings about Measure 110, it was $288 million to help provide access to treatment services in a way that Oregon has never seen. Again, despite anybody's feelings, I'm not for decriminalization. Like, I stopped doing drugs, I stopped committing crime. It's an amazing correlation. So I'm not for decriminalizing drugs. I am 100% for compassionate accountability, which I believe we have in House Bill 4002. There is accountability, and I am all for it. And I spent a bunch of time locked up because of my actions, but it was the accountability that helped me make different choices in my life. So despite somebody's belief on Measure 110, it did give us something that we've never had, which opened up a door to real change and possibility for change. You take away from that, and what we're having and seeing in every community in this state is now treatment agencies are having to cut positions and close their doors. So we're not moving forward anymore, we're moving backwards. So we're gonna even be worse off than we were before the dump of $288 million into our treatment.
Lisa, there was a moment there where you were like, no, you're not fond of the communication, I take it.
I think that many of us are so under-resourced that we don't have time to talk to each other, which is why I love this roundtable. I think that Measure 110 was a huge mistake by Oregon, and I'll tell you something surprising. At the time, the Democratic Party board chair here in Lake County, who is the director of services over divergence, actually advocated both at the Democratic Party organization level and at the local DPLC level against Measure 110, and he was one of the few voices that raised that. I remember the voters pamphlet where we had pages of people testifying why this was going to help people. It helped no one. That $288 million you're talking about, some organizations did some amazing money with that. We also read about the fact that there were organizations that received millions of dollars and served 9 clients. So when we talk about how to focus funds and how they're used, responsibility in that, accountability in those nonprofits, many of the nonprofits are paid by the number of people that go through their doors, not the number of people who successfully graduate from their programs. And that is a huge problem because they just want to keep the money rolling. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely refuse to pay anybody on our staff. Not that we have the money, but if we did, we're not going to, because we're trying to get these people off the street, not have our nonprofit continuing to grow. And for the numbers that we're talking about, in the last 3 years, 32,000 meals served 3 years ago, 52,000 meals served last year. We're looking at 80,000 meals to be served this year, and I'm trying to put us out of business. The amount of, it's not just poverty, the people that we're seeing, we have extreme mental illness, we have people who've fallen into addiction and don't know how to get out, which is why having addiction services that also have navigators is incredibly important. Housing First doesn't work. You have to have a client services person helping that person through their recovery, and they're going to make some mistakes, and that's okay because we all do. But just parking them into a house and then thinking that everything is going to be okay does not work, which is why I think it's being really frustrated that we spent $288 million, and for $288 million, you think that we have more success, but we don't. Our numbers are going up and not down. And by the way, that point-in-time count, they didn't actually do a point-in-time count. They did an estimate last time. So that number isn't good either. So the fact that we're in this room talking about these things is incredibly important to me. And I will also tell you one more thing. I've been serving with neighbors, Safe Neighborhoods, and Eugene County workers since 2020. Served with Career Brigade before that and did their nonprofit corporation. In the last 6 years, the only time we have ever had anybody come down and serve with us, and they didn't even serve, it was a photo op, was during COVID. I had Matt Keaton, Jennifer Gay, Randy Grove, and Senator Manning, who was my senator for my House district, come down to the park for a photo op because we served all the way through COVID, never missed a day. The only other person who has ever come down and taken a look at that is that woman over there. She comes and serves with us every 2 weeks. She serves coffee, she talks to people, and she follows up with clients. That's the kind of communication, that's the kind of leadership we want to see at work. It's somebody who actually shows up and does the work. That's what I have to say about that.
Lisa, before we story, let's show here, out of curiosity, and briefly, because I want to get to everybody here. What's your relationship with law enforcement?
Oh dear.
Uh-oh. Yeah? Okay, I preface it briefly.
Briefly, okay, so we actually love our law enforcement. I'm on record as saying I pray for them every day, and I too. When we are in trouble in the park with somebody who is in psychosis or having a problem or has a medical thing, we literally had people fall out on the sidewalk and face plant and had to call 911, and they were there in minutes. And we are grateful for their service. We're not very happy about the fact that we currently have an EPD situation where they're continuing to ticket people in the park for things like smoking a cigarette. I know how much it costs to put a police officer in a car. I know how much it costs to put somebody in jail. I don't think that's the best use of our funds, and when we talk about that, we have enough crime and problems in our community. I don't think ticketing somebody for $200 for smoking a cigarette, where they're going to go to community court, that will be dismissed. Gordy, who's a schizophrenic that we serve every single day, they actually ticketed him for he was trespassing the park. He put 1 foot into the dirt. He just tripped. They arrested him, took him to jail, and he made it back in time for breakfast. Is that the best use of our taxpayer dollars? I have some problems with that. But I do value our law enforcement incredibly. And I know that these deflection programs, I've had at least 6 people that I know that are in 7-year programs. And I am so grateful. We send food boxes to them, we're following up with them, and I am so grateful for the fact that we're getting people off the streets and helping manage their well-being.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, why don't we, Tristan, so we had a chance to talk before this. You were very boots on the ground. You work trying to get people from under opioid addiction, and you actually go out to the homeless camps and meet with them one-on-one, trying to get them into some sort of treatment. What are you seeing out there, and how much of this is drug related, and how much of it do you think is just mental health?
It's really hard to follow Josh because we sit here, but a lot of their points we see as well. I think the lack of peer services, I mean, what Clint does is work a lot with his people, and I think they do amazing work, but how can we intervene before they get arrested? How can we help them before they become homeless? I think that's our biggest struggle point. And a lot of those things we talked about, they'll go to the park, maybe they were up all night and they fall asleep and then they went to jail, and then it's a constant cycle of in and out of jail, in and out of jail. I don't know that's really helping them be productive members of society, helping them get back on their feet, helping them get jobs. I would say that's what I would see.
Okay. Let's get the microphone over to Dan if we can here. Yeah, just he's got a good feedback. Okay, Dan, we kind of come at this from a different angle, dealing specifically with veterans. And I'll ask the same question that I asked her. How much of it is mental health, PTSD, traumas from being in combat, and how much of it is just a couple of drugs?
So, my experience, and I'm going to go back in time, I haven't worked with homeless for so many years. One of the biggest problems we have today is we can't agree to disagree. It's online, it's beautifully what I said, we're not friends, you're not my Facebook buddy, and help. And we've gotten away from being able to agree. Having the points of view, and at the end of the day, we still love each other. We just don't agree on this particular issue. And I think that's the big problem where we're at now. I'll go back in time, with the sheriff's office, back in the 90s, early 2000s, we were doing peer mentoring, we didn't have a name for that. Working with these common line used to be, some people get arrested, some people get arrested because it stops the behavior. And it was a change of thought that for the last 20 years, who let us go right now, the job that Clint did, and the job that Sheriff Wilkerson is doing now. When it comes to the veteran part of it, though, the biggest part of this is the mental health. TBI, PTSD, most folks that have PTSD in the military have as kids and resurface as they get into the military. And these people are broken. Something's broken. We're very fortunate at Veterans Legacy, and I will preface that we are 35 miles outside of town, so I don't get to see the daily issues that they get around in the woods. But as we see these folks and we meet these folks, we now have a mental health specialist on staff that is a combat trained veteran, 10 years experience, that has been through the VA process. He's taken field with these guys on everything. So being able to have that person is incredible. Having that, hey, I've been there too, makes a world of difference. But every person that actually comes out there, it all starts with mental health issues. And I know the code room with the drugs and alcohol, we're not a web program by any means, that's zero tolerance. We have veteran treatment, we have our own community. This community has to come first. So a green card doesn't matter. A green card is no different than a bottle of Jack Daniels. It's true to everyone else. And that is the one thing that has to be true to us, is we are a clean, sober environment that creates that healing for these things. Having our own on-site mental health, getting these guys to treatment, working for emergency with the veteran support has been fantastic. Or having it for us to work with these folks. We don't care about criminal background. We don't care if you've got what we want to apply. But we want to, we don't care if you have bad conduct discharge. We're probably one of the few nonprofits that allow service entities. We have our own penalties. It's about the brotherhood that we all had in the military and reinforcing that, getting them back to that point where you can make these decisions and we start planning for the future. What does it take for you to make that transition?
Yeah, no, they all there, all your guests, they all there voluntarily. They're not in any program or referral program?
No, we get some referrals. We do a lot of work. We actually do a lot of transition leave with prisons. We have guys that have been in a tank, for lack of better words, with 140 other men. And we have programs here, but when you make that wraparound service, that warm handout, when they come out to us, they have their own room. They have 107 acres, and we start that transition. And in fact, in our program, after they've been accepted, they get voted on by the other veterans that live there. So it means you can't come out and act like a freak. You've got to have some skin in the game still. And then once you get voted in, you get your own dog tag that we all got to know, and you have to be military to actually experience that. To read special legacy the name, your start date. And when they graduate, you take one of those dog tags and put on their wall of honor. Because you're always welcome back. Either as a services or a getting paid forward. And we maintain contact with all the veterans that graduate. So we're consistently following up with them.
Steve, the Friendly Foundation, 66-room shelter, you work with a deflection program, giving those people a place to live as they're going through deflection. How many of those people actually that go through there were or are actually homeless, and how many of them are just, they're on drugs, maybe they already have a place to live, and they have to go through reflection because they're serial offenders at every road.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I'll go back a little bit because you were talking about policy.
Yes.
And so when we first got started 5 years ago here in Oregon, we're a 501c3 from Arizona that moved here for family reasons to Oregon. And we really looked at what the biggest issues were in Wayne County before we started our mission. And we noticed that homelessness and behavioral health and addiction were the three largest issues that the community was facing. And so when we got started, we found that Old Econo Lodge on 7th and 8th Avenue opened up and we received funding from the VA for 35 units and funding from the governor's all-in funding. But that governor's all-in funding required a lease agreement. And because we had folks that were coming from unhoused situations with a lease agreement, it meant that they had landlord tenant rights. And so we really struggled with that situation because it was a housing first model. And we had people who were doing drugs in their rooms. We had folks that were doing prostitution, and we had two of our rooms were burned down. And so the housing first model was very difficult for us. And so when Clint and Josh came and offering a vision of what this collection program could be, we jumped on board because there is no lease agreement as part of this program. There's no lease agreement with our VA veterans. And what we've seen is, I think Josh mentioned, compassionate accountability. And so what we do is we have the peer supported case management. When somebody comes in from off the street, they immediately get all the food they need, the toiletries, the linens, whatever they need to be able to, and food. And we notice that we also make sure that they are drug and alcohol free on campus, but we also make sure that they get room checks. So when they come in, they get room checks every day until they don't need to be daily room checks. And that has really helped us with that accountability to make people more successful as they go. We've taken what Clint's vision was and Josh's vision, and we've brought that over to our veterans population. So I'm very happy to say that we have, in our last report, 84% of our veterans have successfully moved to permanent housing. And that's something that we're incredibly proud of. And it's because of the fact that we are working as a team within the community. And
all right, Cheryl.
Well, we have so much to talk about and so honored to be part of this panel. I think I can echo a lot of the comments that have been made. So first off, I would say that many of the failures of policies, I think, come from not a recognition that we're actually perversely incentivizing antisocial behaviors. Instead of moving people towards human flourishing, we're actually incentivizing people to stay stuck in a really difficult space. And we can all argue in this room about what the underlying causes are, but we're keeping people stuck. And that's why I mentioned COVID, because I really noticed during COVID where people were stepping away from relational touches. They're sitting back, they were zooming in, they were not actually stepping forward into relational touches with people. They wanted to drive by and throw food out the window at people as opposed to getting to know people's names and what their hurts were. And they are complex, and we do need to engage in wraparound supportive services. Hey, and even more so, we need to walk alongside people and rebuild the portions of their lives that are broken. We can't just put them somewhere. We can't just put them on medication. We can't just hope by giving them some material thing that suddenly they're going to be healed from the trauma, the grief, the loss, the addiction, all of those elements. And that's what we're doing at the Eugene Mission. We recognize that people need to be rebuilt, and we need to be there in a loving and supportive way. And we also recognize that public dollars aren't there. And sometimes private dollars out there, except from private generous donors, and this community's very generous volunteers. And we have leaned into this intensely relational model, and we are seeing extraordinary results. And what's painful for me is when I see from a policy perspective, where those policies are disincentivizing people from stepping into an intensely relational residential recovery center or programs like we have where people can be getting robust classes and activities to help them rebuild their lives. And instead those people are being incentivized to stay in predatory environments where they will be continuing in deteriorating situations. So from a policy perspective, there's so many things we need to address, from addressing involuntary commitment, to addressing health and safety, to addressing, going way back, we want to really think about it, look at public intoxication from the 1970s. I mean, there are really broad situations, and it's not because any of us lack profound love and care and compassion for our neighbors. It's because we do that we want to return them to human flourishing. So I could go on. I just figured I'd let you all.
Clint, you run the deflection program. Do you think that you would have the results that several at this table have said you're doing good stuff? Do you think you would be able to have results in the deflection program without that level of accountability?
I would like an opportunity to go back and
Yes.
answer some of the questions I got earlier.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything I know is from my career. My career in law enforcement is pretty much everything I know of how we built this program and how we went about doing it. And when you ask mental health or substance use disorder, you oftentimes don't know that it is the same. And over time, the drugs that are out there right now look like mental health. When somebody gets clean and sober, you find out it was more on the addiction side than the mental health side. So you really don't know. When you're working in jail, all looks the same. What we built with our program is what I thought for years needed. When you don't keep people connected to resources, if you give them a referral and they do it on their own, oftentimes the addiction is too high and they can't get there. So we intentionally built our program with navigators, counseling, and made it easy for law enforcement to deflect. The number one crimes we see that go to jail that have a substance use disorder or mental health disorder, trespass, disorderly conduct, drug possession, because that was number 110. The success we're seeing in our program, we might have somebody at Rebel for 24 hours. Our team gets them into detox immediately. You have to voluntarily take our program. Law enforcement is offering the accountability piece. You're going to go to jail, get a citation, or take deflection. Which one do you want? What would you take? Right there at that time, what sounds like the best? That's the best time to intervene. And so when they take deflection, we have immediate stabilization housing. You have to build a treatment plan. You have to engage a provider. My job is to make sure that that person's doing all that, along with the DA's office. And then those folks oftentimes are at Rebel for a day. They go to detox. When they're in detox, we give them an inpatient treatment bed or outpatient, whatever they need. They don't have any unconnected time to resources. And so we built a program that's never existed like that before. Every single step of the way, all of our graduates, when you came to our graduation, most of them went deflection, detox, inpatient, recovery house, graduation, and they all will say, had it not been for the connected resources of the navigator, it wouldn't work. We don't have housing institute. We have stabilization units. It's a short stay to keep them connected as we move them on. And if we had more programs like this in the community doing this sort of work with navigators and housing and keeping them connected, we'd see better results.
Okay, we always hear, and we've heard this in media, we just don't have enough beds. We don't have enough beds. Do you have enough beds?
What's funny is I used to think the same thing when I was joking, when I followed Captain Buffalo. Having navigators like we have right now, they send people not only locally, all over the state, all over the nation. There's beds out there if you have a team of dedicated navigators working on it. The one thing that's different with our program, our navigators only work on that piece of it. They don't provide the treatment. They provide the connection. So yes, it's a challenge. We could always use more,
So, from your point of view, how do you view that whole situation? What's the reality as opposed to what maybe we hear?
Well, we need to start with, I think that our community is incredibly empathetic and everybody's trying to do the right thing. However, we have large gaps and the system is a system that has hydraulics and hydraulics are off. Speaking from my perspective, Lake County is one of the least patrolled counties in the United States. We don't have the resources to do rural law enforcement that we should and our community deserves. But a lot of this is excuse me. Clint does an amazing job, Matt does an amazing job because they find the resources. We need to get out of the mindset that one size fits all because each one of these programs are helping a specific person at a specific time in a specific, specific situation. We have veterans programs, we have those folks who need that, we have the question for those folks, but no one program is going to fix anything. We really do need to be collaborative and have the conversations with each other. And those people think that we can only do treatment to get our reality. They miss the mark because there are people that are not going to accept help until they hit rock bottom or in the jail. Josh can probably tell you how many people he knows that will say the cop or the person in the jail say they're alive. But at the same time, we need to have off-ramps so that at any stage, we can be saying, this person is finally ready and willing to accept help. And that's where we get it to. So, we can do better. I used to say that, this community is great for those who have mental health problems and are easy. There are all kinds of resources out here for these people. It's the hard people, it's the challenging people that these folks around this table are serving that we need to pay attention to. And we need to be ready and available. They are ready and available.
Out of curiosity, calls for service, repeated contacts, tied to homelessness, how does that show up in day-to-day enforcement in the sheriff's office?
Well, again, going back to what I said earlier, my folks are putting out fires. They go call. And we don't have the same type of call volume that the city of Eugene has when it comes to quality of life issues. We're not doing trespassers on in front of a business most of the time. But the overlapping issue of substance abuse and mental health, which I don't think you really can enforce the two, because I think one goes together and the other goes together. So those are involved in almost every call service we go to. We primarily respond to domestic service calls or domestic violence calls, and those almost always have some sort of chemical addiction issue or substance issue associated with them. So even doing rural patrol, that is the issue. And again, we need to find ways to make sure that when people are ready to make that decision, we get them in that spot. I would love to see programs like Clint's and Josh's expanded so that we can offer some of the services that they provide to things outside of kind of the quality of life issues. I'd love to have other off-ramps. I think we're missing some important tools that we're working on, like the stability center, stabilization center. I mean, that's a no wrong door answer where not just law enforcement can take people, but families who are at wit's end and don't know what to do with somebody can take them. We have tools that we need to fix, and this is speaking as a guy who thinks that the primary responsibility of government is to provide public safety, roads, and schools. So I need more staff. I'm not going to say I don't, but we also need to work together and use the tools that we have.
You want to weigh in on this?
Of course. Really great input from everyone. Of course, the policymaker and someone with a legal background, what you brought up, Cheryl, really resonates. Your example, Steve, of a lease agreement for a fentanyl addict. In availing them of all the protections of landlord-tenant law in Oregon is absurd, right? We need to talk about that. And these are really helpful things to me to hear. Just what are the actual laws that are making it so difficult to get people to the help that you provide? So the civil commitment laws in Oregon are some of them that are difficult to get somebody civilly committed. And I've spoken to so many people because of our laws, our Oregon laws, they can't. And so I'm noticing a lot of people haven't connected the dots between the law that's passed by our elected representatives that leads to these barriers to all of these great programs that are here to help people. So that's very meaningful input. We can't cover it all today, but the honest discussion of we have lawmakers that we elect that pass laws that are really making it, well, like you said it so well, Cheryl, disincentivizing people who are really hurting and in trouble, addicted, mentally ill, disincentivizing them to move to the light, where we have this generous, compassionate community that wants to help these people, but our laws are disincentivizing that right direction.
I want to go back to Clint here for a second. When you're dealing and coordinating with officers on these hands-offs, and you also have experience being boots on the ground as a law enforcement officer, what kind of tools or coordinations do those boots on the ground, those police officers, say that they need that may still be somewhat lacking or is lacking in trying to connect somebody with what it is that they need?
Well, first off, two things to that answer. We got to have the program we have now for them to operate, and the person's got to want it and take it. So that's something. But we also built a tool for law enforcement they never had before. Let's just take drug possession, for example. You can arrest someone, take them to jail, cite release them, or you can now offer them help. Josh was with me when I talked to every law enforcement agency in our community. Police want to offer people help. They were excited to have this opportunity. Josh told them, think of, you probably know 20 people right now that you could probably just offer this to because their criminality stems from drug addiction. So our first 20 deflections, that's what it was. Officers went out and contacted people they've been dealing with for years. So it was welcome. Law enforcement, it was new, it was different. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but law enforcement was excited to try something different. People that get into law enforcement want to help people. That's the number one thing they say to interviews when you interview somebody. It's 21 years old, they want to help people, they want to serve their community. And so someone's got to want it. That's the big thing, is the person's got to want something different. Somebody said something earlier too, and I've said my whole career, how do you help someone that doesn't want help? Keep offering them help. That's what you do. What else are you going to do? But what do I tell Josh all the time? How do we get to yes? How do we get to yes? But the 8th time might be the time the person says yes. And so we've got to keep offering them as we hold them accountable for their actions, which the sheriff said, jails are always going to be needed in our community. Prisons are going to be needed. I know people that got their help from jail, prison, and now go for deflection.
I want to bring Jensine into this conversation. Kevin, if you could. I need some of the front-end video games. All right, thank you. And we'll do the hand up here. It's like a hostage swap. Here, leave the mic. I get to be quiet. Jensine, working as you did with the police department and with kind of, I guess, the mental health and wellness subcommittee, what kind of toll do you see or did you see that this was taking on, the law enforcement community? Because you brought up, we have officers out there that are seeing these same people recommit every day. What kind of toll did you see that was taking on, those folks?
So as a police commissioner, I made it a mission of mine to go on a ride-along at least once a month. And so I went on, I would say, probably a couple of dozen ride-alongs, all different shifts, all different areas of town. And one thing that really struck me was the amount of respect with which they address the people that they're called to. Here's the thing, when business owners in the Chamber of Commerce are constantly hounding Chief Skinner and saying, you guys aren't cleaning up my front doorstep. How come you're letting all these people hang out in the park? It's not safe for my kids. Chief Skinner and CPD have a very fine line to walk.
And so, Lisa, I appreciate you saying that you pray for the officers, because honestly, they don't enjoy going down there and doing this reach. They don't love being the person that's known for giving a $200 ticket to somebody who tripped over. They do know a lot of the backstory on these people, and a lot of times there's other warrants. But I have been with officers when somebody, they pick them and they put in the backseat of the car, and he's got a ton of little misdemeanors, and he's begging the officer, I just want to go to jail. I want to get clean. I need help. What can you do to help me? Can you just roll all my charges together to make a felony? What can you do to help me? And I've seen how the officers respond to that. And it's rough for them. I tease them all the time. Why on earth would anybody want to be a cop in Eugene or Oregon? Because every single where they go, they've got a target on their back. There's a bullet between their shoulder blades. Everywhere they go, there's somebody, the way that Randy Rose, our former fire chief, put it, is that when fire comes rolling down the street with their lights flashing, people wave at them with all 5 fingers. And so it's really, really rough. From what I see in the law enforcement, dealing with the community that is unhoused and sheltered needs resources. They don't have the resources to give them. They don't have the time to be able to track down the resources. But I really appreciated the time that I've seen the officer have a conversation with somebody. Here's your choice. Do you want to go to jail? Would you rather go to Buckley House? Because I can see that there's this warrant from some other county, and you know what? That's not as important to me right now as making sure that you're safe tonight. And how do we get you clean tonight? And it's really amazing to watch that heart in action, because when you think of police as a kid, when somebody wants to be a cop, you think guns and robbers and things like that. And so much more of what I've been privileged to witness firsthand is that interaction with the people where they do know them by name, and they address them with courtesy. And even when somebody's mouthing off and the officer of Miranda rights because they had the rights them so many times, it's amazing to see the respect and the courtesy that is involved.
I'll ask you this, and probably this should be directed at the sheriff, but have you ever had any conversations with maybe officers or others in law enforcement? And this is kind of outside of the addiction conundrum, where people are picked up on a mental health. We had a well-known case that happened not that long ago. Homeless individual accosted and assaulted an 18-year-old walking down West 11th. The person was arrested. Turns out this person has been arrested a number of times. They go to jail. They can't aid in their own defense because of mental issues. We don't have the mental health beds, so we're told. And so because they can't aid in their own defense, and because the state limits how much time they can be in jail, they're released back out on the street. And it just happens over and over. Or so we're led to believe. Your thoughts?
It's demoralizing. Not only the DPD, I've also done ride-alongs with Portland Police Department, who is currently under a consent decree from the Department of Justice. And their entire way of policing has changed. And to be fair, we don't want the kind of policing that Portland was previously doing. There's no room for that in our community. But at the same time, their hands are tied even more than what we see here. And it's demoralizing to the police officers. For example, my husband is the president of the NAACP. I happen to be vice president of Asian American Council of Oregon. And there's a whole lot of bias-based crimes that you see out there, but officers know that flagging a crime as bias means there's more paperwork to do. It puts a greater burden of proof on the DA's office or anybody who's prosecuting. And it's really tough because who honestly has the time to go through all of that, especially if somebody lawyers out that does that. And so it is really frustrating for the officers when they know that something is wrong, it should be fixed, their hands are tied, they can't fix it. And one thing I also wanted to say about officers, when they hear that a frequent flyer is in jail, I have never ever once heard them say, oh yeah, I put the bad guy away. Almost always they say, I am so glad they're finally getting help.
I want to pass, if you would, John, you have the microphone there. So when I asked that question about, this revolving door for these individuals who have severe mental issues, where they go to jail, they're held for a short amount of time, they're released because they can't aid in their own defense, and whether there's enough beds for it, and your head was going up and down. Can we assume, or should we assume, or even make the assumption that while, as Clint said, we have the drug deflection beds, do we have enough actual mental health beds for the individuals, like the individual that I referred to earlier?
So I'll answer that with true facts and statistics. So Oregon was rated 51st in the nation for access to SUDs, so substance use disorder treatment services, 51st. I'm not a mathematician, but there's only 50 states. We were rated 51st. When you go to mental health, access to mental health services, we were rated 50. So it's not, when people say that there's not enough beds for mental health, it's not just people saying things to say things or to shift blame or point the finger in another direction. There really truly is. And so being able to, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around access to these services, addiction and mental health. And when you look at the fact that the situation that you described, it's very unfortunate, and it happens across every community, every county in this state, because there just isn't, and there isn't. Law enforcement's hands are tied. There's different rulings and legislative and laws and stuff that prevent them from being incarcerated. So then what do you do? I mean, it's a question we should all be asking our congresspeople, our legislation, our Senate, our representatives, what can we do? And then pushing to make that happen, because people need help, and it's demoralizing for law enforcement, it's demoralizing for the individual. I can't agree with you more. What happened to I care about you enough to tell you or help you get help? Why is it that it's now okay for someone on the way here? I drove past an individual that had feces all over themselves, and they're walking down the street, and people are walking away from them, not walking to. And I understand that. That's not a sanitary situation. But why is it that individual, I can probably guarantee that when I leave here, if I drove by and saw the person, they'd still be in the same state. That's not okay. But what are we to do? Because if we call moral crisis, what are they going to do? Where are they going to take them? Because the other thing in this state is that the person just has to refuse to get in the car. And you can't. It's kidnapping. Correct? Is that the correct terminology? Is that right? Pretty close. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it puts everybody in a position, right? So, having that, as a community, asking the question of, how do we fix it? It should be, again, I think that Monique is doing a great job by allowing this to happen, because she's taking notes, and I believe she's taking notes because she wants to fix problems within this community. And so, there just is not access to these beds.
Okay, Monique. If you're elected, you're charged with, at least in part, dealing with this.
Well, remember in the opening remarks, I was saying how we measure things differently, and all organizations are not kind of on the same page with that, and so we get kind of down the weeds and start fighting about statistics, where'd you get that number? But I wanted to ask you, so I've had the privilege of talking to many of you and asking all these questions, but the public hasn't, maybe even this audience hasn't. When we talk about beds, at least many of you have described to me, it's not just the beds. When you give me a tour of the jail, there's tons of room in there, right? It's staffing a bed. The jail bed is now a full medical staff that's required. So I just wondered if one of you wants to comment on that, really defining, there aren't enough beds available. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but you hear about veteran facilities that have lots of empty beds, that they're housing beds for someone just being sheltered that are not being filled. But then there's this additional, a bed really is not just a place to stay, it has to be fully staffed, right? So there's just one example of how we need to just
talking about mental health, there is not enough mental health beds available. It's not a staffing issue. I mean, there is a staffing issue as well, but mental health beds and access to those beds, there is not. I guarantee it that at the mission, there is lots of available beds. But when you start talking about that specific population of people, the mental health crisis, the person that I described as I drove over here, there is not access to those beds. Like, that's why, Center Street, Marion County State Hospital, that's why they're in the mess that they're in. There's not enough.
I have to say, it's interesting, and I'm just going to throw this comment out there. It's interesting what you just brought up. My mom worked at the Oregon State Hospital for about 30 years, from the 60s to about 1991. And I remember back then, her saying, this is incredible. What I asked you, Sheriff, because many brought up an interesting thing, that it's not just a jail bed anymore. That all of a sudden, it's like you're sort of running a health clinic. Talk about that.
Well, I tell people all the time, we run the largest psychiatric hospital in Lane County, probably in South Salem. Yeah, we have great resources at the jail because we have a great contractor with providing state services. But I guess the example I can give you is, back in the day, both Dan and Clint, ran our forced work camp, and that's where we sent our minimum adults in custody out to serve their sentences or do the thing. We don't have those kinds of people in our custody anymore. We don't have those kinds of people. What we have, people that need to be generally in a single cell because they're going to hurt themselves or others, and they are severely sick. We have some spaces and dorms, but the problem is we just don't have the type of people that we put together in the dorm. And I think that's a systemic problem that has a lot of different, much like my budget work, it has a lot of different points in time that have impacted how that happens. In the 60s, they started, along with the state hospital, they started pulling away from civil commitments and all of that stuff, and really recognizing the rights of individuals, which I think is great. But the pendulum has gone way too far, and despite the fact that people really don't have the ability to care for themselves anymore, I have people in my custody who need the VCs, yet we can't force medicate them. Tell me that is okay. That is not okay. We really do need to have some court decisions, some legislative decisions that allow us or empower us to help people, not to take away from people's rights, but we all can agree in here that there is a point in somebody's life when they're going through these issues that they no longer have that ability to make reasonable, logical decisions for themselves.
Have you talked to other lawmakers? You're not a lawmaker, but have you talked to lawmakers about the issue of civil commitment? And if so, I'm curious, and the changes that should be made to it, at least that you referred to, what's the feedback from them?
Sorry, but generally feedback is, oh yeah, we're going to work on that. And then the next photo off that they can take a picture with the sheriff in uniform, they'll show up and we're going to work on that again. So.
Is that a nice way of saying lip service?
It's a way of saying lip service, yeah. I'm not sure it was all that nice, but.
Cheryl, if you could just pass that down to Cheryl, what do you think, and we're just going to kind of pass around here and just bat this around. If there is a disconnect between what I consider these people, everybody here needs boots on the ground, and then there are people who make decisions that change the laws, change the statutes, or don't. What do you think the disconnect there is?
Well, I think we're all touching on it, is that in order to get to a solution here, we actually have to have those pieces of
in place. There has to be some place for people to go to do that healing. And that is very expensive. It's not just a bed, it's all of those relational services that go along with it. And that needs to be resourced. And what I said from the very beginning is that I think there's been a gross misallocation of our public funds. And I'm a budget type person. I love to dig into those budgets. I've seen how funds are being allocated to things that are not effective. I'd like to see, and we're not going to be competing for those dollars, but I'd like to see those dollars going to be making the types of recovery, residential services, the type of mental health options, and to see the civil commitment laws change to increase the window so that you don't have to be an imminent threat to self or others, but just a broader time frame so that we don't have people on the street that are, as the sheriff described. But there has to be no deflection, no diversion program can be effective if there's nowhere for folks to go. And it's very easy for us to stand up beds. The mission has talked about this. You know, we could slot in people. The real investment is in those services and in connecting with people. And it's just like my same criticism of these, none of us are doing this, but these kind of very fluffy outreach where they don't really connect with people. They don't really do anything, but they get a lot of funds. Those funds should be poured into the types of services that get the outcomes. And that is expensive, where you are helping people recover from mental health issues or from addiction issues.
You want to say something about it? I did want to say. Okay, go ahead. So when you talk about someone on aid and assist, once somebody goes into the criminal justice system, it looks good to have a civil commitment. But once they go through that, you can't get that asphalt. And so when I started early in my career with these guys, we had a hospital that was connected to jail. And a lot of folks with severe mental health issues didn't wind up in jail. Or if they did, I wasn't young enough, or I wasn't old enough to ask enough questions back then. But I used to see them in the jail and then the next day over at the psych hospital. And as they close those resources down, we're literally running people in the wrong lane. When you send some, like the person Josh described right now, when they go to the state hospital to see if they're fit for trial, they're not necessarily up there to treat them for their mental health issues. It's literally, can they defend themselves in court and are they fit for trial? I've watched over the last 20 years, the civil commitment process has completely almost evaporated to where we don't take people to a hospital. So our law enforcement has one place they can take them, the county jail. And then they go into the aid and assist. I hope as a crisis, the stable addiction center we're building gives some of that back. But if I was to ask lawmakers to work on it, really sit down and understand the civil commitment process from an aid and assist are completely different. But once we go down the road of the criminal justice system, you can't undo that one. And what we're doing is we're releasing people back to the street and we're not working on the help that they really need.
I'd kind of like to bring Lisa into this because you have kind of an interesting sort of connection here between this. What do you think? Do you see the reality out there of what these people are going through as you're feeding them? The public, a lot of times, when they see a homeless person or a situation like Josh just described, he was driving here and what he saw, they see that, they get angry, they maybe have had some petty thefts at their house because homeless people have stolen their propane tanks or their generators back during the cold snap that we had a couple of years ago. And they have that, and there is a certain growing animosity in the community towards those individuals. What would you tell them, that maybe they're not seeing here that they need to realize?
Well, first of all, I do want to acknowledge the fact that I don't know how in our society we expected our police officers to also be medical professionals. And mental health treatment is the most complex treatment that you could possibly have. So expecting them to do effective policing and also be a psychiatrist is really an unfair
position on the people that I see. And I know this from a first-hand basis because I served 250 people on Saturday. I had 3 schizophrenics, 2 living full psychosis. Thank God we had occupied medical on site. We had to provide our volunteers because we're not trained medical professionals, but we had to de-escalate. And one of them was so bad, thank God I know his father and was able to call his dad and said, you gotta come get Isaac, otherwise we're gonna have to call the police. It's not fair that we expect as a society for our policing group to also have to handle mental health. And that relationship, we got rid of all of our mental health hospitals in an effort to provide, I guess, not lock people up involuntarily. And when you talk about that pendulum swing, so far the wrong way. I know that I have a number of people, that come back through my life who say, they got out of the jail and asked me for 30 days, and I'm going to be able to go into a program. I know that works, but that's not fair to our jail or to our law enforcement in any capacity, and we have no safety net for those people. I have a guy that's helping the same guy coming through our line, and he's got sunblocks that are covered in blue. I know he is. I've tried to help him. I finally talked 2 of my schizophrenics into getting the shot. Dr. Mulberry has got a team that is mostly going out into the community and connecting with people, and we can get them a monthly shot that is going to level them out. But this situation is untenable, and we need to change our laws. And it's not about the fact that we don't have enough beds. It's about the civil will to change our laws so that we can stop releasing sexual predators, because I think the guy you're talking about is actually a sexual predator, back into our community because he's not mentally stable and we have no place to house him. That's not safe for our community. It's not safe for any of the other homeless people in the streets either. There are people who are out there that are just poor and bad things that have happened to them. They might not be educated. When you release a sexual predator or a person who's violent back on the streets because they're not medically able, you're now putting the entire community, both the house and the unhoused community, at risk.
What's your response to that, Lee?
Well, I agree 100%. Just have so many thoughts with that you're all bringing up here. It's really prioritizing where we're going to put our resources. We have hundreds of millions of dollars coming into Lane County, much of them federal tax dollars. And where's the money going? That's the question I always ask. If we have orchestration of efforts we need to do, fix the laws, the local laws. But also, and some of those laws could be public records and having an improved access to people, citizens having access to auditing where the money is going. So my conception is we have plenty of money coming into our community, it's just not hitting the target. And we've identified that the targets are the orchestration of efforts needs to include also having laws that allow us to do the right thing. And laws are often allocating the resources. But these are just, we have to talk about these unpleasant scenarios that are really happening every day and the consequences of it. And we need to figure out where's the money going and have laws that remove barriers to treatment and then have the money go to those resources. I want to hear from Jennifer, you too. Tell us some success stories. I've told many of you I wanted to do the tale of 2 cities, comparing Springfield to Eugene, the local ordinances, and why it's such a different experience. And you really laid out your business decisions or impacts by the difference in the environment. What is it? Tell us more about that.
Well, the thing that I really appreciate about Springfield is that we have community support. When our clinic opened, it was October 2019, right? I've never opened a clinic before. I didn't know how to do it. What I did know was that our urgent care clinic didn't take the Oregon Health Plan and that's not right. Everybody has the right to have care. It's not physically responsible to send people to the ED when they could be treated in a more appropriate setting. That was my goal. I was really, really naive, which is fun, right? Sort of flying by the seat of your pants. What I found out was I accidentally ended up in Springfield, and it was really good for me. And when you were talking about knowing people's names, we had this woman come in and she said that you have a requirement to treat my pain, and I want opiates now. And I said, well, that's not how it works. She had already talked to the physician assistant, made her cry. And I said, yeah, we're not getting any opiates here today. You need to leave. And her boyfriend pulled out a type of drug smoking weed in the exam room. And I thought, I said, I'm going to call the police. And they were like, do it. We don't care. So we called the police. A couple of them showed up, a couple minutes, telling him what's going on. We walk around the corner, he opens the door and he goes, come on, Shelly, let's go. When we're talking about money, really what I want to know, because really what we're talking about is how we need more money and how we need to utilize our money better. The Oregon Health Authority is the bane of my existence, okay? They've got a lot of money. They lose it. Did you see this in the news recently? They misplaced, or there were accounting errors of $2.4 billion. Think of what we could do with that money. And so I recently, because my clinic is a nonprofit and it is 55% Oregon Health Plans run, I need to know what's going on in Salem. Usually it pisses me off. I won't lie. Recently, they put together a group of people who are going to, advise the governor on how to do this. And when you look at who is part of this, these policy suggesters, most of them are from Portland. And I don't think that Portland represents Eugene. I know it doesn't represent Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon. And so I think the rest of us just kind of get left with, what's left over. I read a thing today that said that their plan for 2027 is to take all of the healthy people who are on the Oregon Health Plan and move them to an open car. What that means is a 25% cut in pay to providers. So what will happen is people will drop out of DMAP, it's called DMAP in Salem. All of a sudden, we're not going to be able to take care of 100,000 people. They think it's probably 100,000 people. I don't know how they're going to figure out who the healthy ones are, right? Are those the people who don't utilize the services? No. Anyway, that's my perspective. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I got tears in my eyes when you were talking, Cheryl. I got tears in my eyes when Lisa was talking, because I think we all feel the same way, and we're trying to make a difference.
We are making a difference, Jennifer. I've been to your clinic. It's amazing. I recommend you guys check it out or continue to be part of the conversation. Well, it's time to conclude, but we can talk for hours, Dave. We should continue to have these conversations. And again, start crafting the solutions. That takes a lot of work, and I'm willing to do it. I know you guys are all willing to do it. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Really, I know you're busy. And Bill London, it's been an honor to have you here as moderator, sharing your time and experience and your commitment, all of you, to serving our community. When I envisioned this event, my goal was simple. It was to bring all of you valuable people together and make sure that you know each other. You're the people doing this work every day. And I enjoyed learning from you, but it's so important that the public learn these stories and hear the truth and know that we need to grapple with some real issues through policies, through funding, and all the things we've talked about today. So while there may not be agreement on every issue, although it really sounds like we do have that on so many issues, I think we've demonstrated that meaningful progress begins when people are willing to sit around the same table and have respectful conversations, working towards the same common goal, and leaders lead.
reinforce my conviction on that. Thank you to everyone here who's joined us today, and thank you, like I say, to the panelists, thanks for the work that you're doing to make Lane County a safer, healthier, and stronger community. God bless you, God bless our community, and God bless the United States.